just to actually make this initial step. Wherefore, I've always thought about it, and I've been people have told me, yeah, you should do that, but it's always been, I've always thought, I think since COVID, job security, you've been there for a long time. You do a good job, you do good enough, you do, and then all of a sudden you're telling yourself what you shouldn't do. Yeah. And then I'm 2 years down the line and I'm still sat at the same desk, and you thought, well, yeah.
So I'm Matthew Cox, and I'm a business strategist. I've run and grown multiple businesses over the last 15 or so years. Join me on my journey with helping other entrepreneurs figure out what their goals are, how to set them, and how to achieve them. So today we've got our guest on, and they have literally just left a really quite well-paid job at a big law firm. And they have then gone out on their own. And what they are struggling with is potential future growth plans, and actually how they go from being like a one-man band, reliant a little bit upon, say, the franchise that they're involved with, to actually upscaling that business so that it is ironing out the peaks and troughs and focusing on getting themselves into a sustainable position where they've got multiple streams of income and they're not relying upon one niche industry within their micro industry. So if you really, really like that sort of information and that kind of thing, and you want to learn a little bit more about our guest today, Chris, then stay tuned, get yourself a cup of coffee and get ready for the podcast. So I'm here with Chris today, Chris Hoadley from Hsieh Conveyancing Services Limited, consulting for Stepford's Law. That's how you pronounce it.
That's it.
Got it right.
Yeah,
You'll never see the first time now.
Oh, no, don't worry.
So, before we get going, Chris, what I like to ask most of the podcast guests is a little bit about you when you're a young lad. Yeah. So you're kind of, you're kind of 12 through to your 18 levels. Okay. What was young Chris like?
Wow, young Chris. It might be a question to my parents, but I just sport related. I love sport. I love all sports really. So from 12 to 18, played a lot of golf. Played a lot of cricket as well. My dad used to be a professional cricketer, played for Sussex. So we just grew up as kids, playing lots of sport, and then so lots of sport, and then it got to about the age of 17, 18 of sport, took a bit of a back step and start seeing other avenues of your life. And and for me then I was at college, studied law at college. That's where I got into a love for law, and then followed the path. I actually followed the path that my brother took, and I sort of went on the same path and ended up taking a career up in law. So okay. But the younger me was just, I don't know, someone that didn't really know what he wanted to do, to be honest. And sometimes I look back and think, I wonder if I had a clear vision back then as to what I really wanted to do, whether it'd be different from where I am now. But
yeah, it's always good to reflect back on that and think. But I think, to be honest, most people, you probably your fate is panned out a little bit, isn't it? You go verge into adulthood.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I thought I might become a good professional golfer, which thousands of people would think the same thing at my age, and then you realise that actually you're nowhere near as good enough to do that, to make any money out of it. So
winning a glove and a sleeve of balls wasn't going to cut
it. No, exactly that. When you're playing off single figures, you think you're quite good, but some of that is because you've got so much free time as a youngster that you can play on it.
Yeah, definitely. Very addictive sports, golf and cricket and so on. And I think a time comes in most people's lives where they're not going to realise it. I mean, my background was BMXing, and I got to kind of my late teens and realised I weren't going to make it at all. Ended up working at Halfords repairing bikes instead. So it's like those you can't teach is almost like that version of it, really. I think your kind of journey always panned yourself out. It's like, you can probably make some ties from your sporting, like you'll want to be excel in that category, is to how you apply that to your work now and stuff. Isn't it?
Absolutely, and it's brought me so much. You get to meet so many different people through sport. So although my wife might not be that grateful about me loving sport, I think she understands that it's part of me, and it's allowed me to get where I am now. So,
Okay, so tell us a little bit about, I suppose, conveyancing services and your kind of arrangement with the law firm and the rest of it. So tell us about that, because obviously I know you from a previous law firm that you worked at, and then obviously you've gone on to do this. So for the audience, tell us a bit about that.
So I worked for a previous law firm for 7 years from their startup. Absolutely loved it. But it got to a certain point in my life, I suppose, definitely post-COVID, that I thought, you know what, I felt like I was able to bring in enough work myself and do a lot of the work without so much holding hand from them. So I thought, you know what, could I do this for myself? And so I looked into it. I woke up actually one morning I think it was on a Saturday. I had a funny dream, and I may have even been after a night out with my old colleagues, and I woke up and I heard from someone who had set up as a consultant for Setfords. So I'd heard of Setfords before, and I thought, you know what, let's just have a look. Let's just see what it's like. So I went onto their website, and I saw the benefits and the sort of the sales spiel that they had to come and join us. And I thought, well, I may as well have a conversation with them. No harm in having a conversation. So that's where it all sort of started. And that was April last year. So April 23, I started looking into that. Yeah. So I'm a self-employed. I've got my own company, my limited company, which is CH Conveyancing Services Limited. I offer a full range of conveyancing services. Do that on behalf of or in line with Setfords Law. And Setfords are a firm they got their head office in Guildford. They've been around, I think, for about 16 years, and they're in the top 100 law firms in the country. So what their model is that they look after your compliance side of things. They look after your marketing, insurance, panel membership for property lawyers, extremely important. Yeah. All the things that I knew from the startup firm I did work for, how difficult that was for the first few years to conquer. And when I had a chat with these guys on the phone, and they told me all the benefits that they provide you, and it was just a way of you just carrying on sort of what I was doing anyway, but doing it for myself. And I just thought, you know what, there's no good time to start anything, so let's just go for it. Yeah. And so that's where I am today. And did a bit of background research on Setfords, of course, and everyone I've heard from have been very good. So yeah.
So this is kind of like a sort of, I suppose, like a franchise of sorts. Yeah. And does that, is it just yourself at the moment, or you've got anyone working with you? Or?
Well, this is a big thing. So yes, it is just for myself. So they've got admin support up in Guildford. They've got a team of probably around about 100 assistants. Yeah. And I can tap into that. So if I need them to open files and do some of the admin side of things, I just send up a dictation to them. I don't know these people. But they come back, they do the work, and it comes back to me. Yeah. But the next step is to wonder whether to take anyone on so that I can increase my capacity. Yeah. That's where it then becomes fun.
The next step. So I think that's interesting. We'll kind of move on, I suppose, to your sort of immediate goals, and then maybe your longer term ones. And I've got here kind of maybe a 1 year goal, started in February, so still fairly fresh. We're kind of 6 months in at this point. You want to ensure that I set myself some realistic goals based on matters transactions opened, as conveyancing works in a 3-month cycle, budgets and so on for the first 3 months of the year, just to break even from what my salary would have been previously. So I don't know, did you achieve that in the first 6 months to break even?
So the first because conveyancing is 3 months, so that you get paid. Well, essentially that's what property transaction. Yeah. So I had to budget for the first 3 months not to be paid at all. Yeah. So I've kept my overheads low. I've got a home office at home, and I've got a membership down at the Foundry, which is shared office spaces in Eastbourne. So that's really my overheads, and so that allows me to not take on so much work, charge accordingly, look after the clients, make sure that they're happy to repeat customer.
Yeah.
But the main thing was just to keep realistic goals. And have I managed to? Yes. I have hit exactly what the points that I wanted. I haven't gone ridiculously over, but which is also great, because I don't want to then. The last thing I want to do is overpromise and underperform. So, but so at the moment, if we look at the first year, I like to think that come 31st of January next year, which would be my first year, that I would have hit the target of really just making the amount of money that I did at the old firm.
Yeah.
And not getting too far ahead of myself.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the more longer term goals were to kind of expand the business and maybe take on some staff and so on. But you've also got your 10-year plan, maybe possibly to expand upon, because it's conveyancing primarily, maybe to go into a fully fledged sort of law firm.
Yeah.
What kind of hurdles do you think are going to kind of prevent you from reaching those goals? Because at the moment you've kind of got to the point where you've replaced your salary, which is good, and you can work on your own terms and the rest of it. But then to get to that next league up where you've started employing people, and then maybe looking at that longer term strategy, what are the hurdles?
Well, staffing, I suppose. So I think the hurdles. Well, the property market. I do residential property, so I've got to be, the property market is always up and down.
Yeah.
Of late, it's been very much up and down, especially with everything that's been going on. But so I suppose my first year, which would probably end up being my first 3 years, would be just to see how I get on my own, and whether I could bring in someone who could help with administration, so that I don't have to dictate to people and I can train them up, and whether they're going to then also help me, so that I don't have to be everywhere all the time, and also hopefully bring in some work themselves. So that it's a win-win there. But I think then the 10-year goal would be possibly to break away from what I'm doing and open up my fully fledged law firm. And with that, I would be still obviously very much property related, and see what.
Under your current arrangement, are you allowed to take on other types of work and the rest of it, presumably outside, like as in directly underneath your own limited company?
No, I'm not, because of insurance purposes. I think. So I could do consultancy work for anyone else. Yeah. As long as I'm covered under that. So I'm not. Yeah.
You'd have to get your own insurance. No. But you're not prevented by the.
That's right. Yeah.
Wanted to. Yeah. Okay.
So the agreement, the consultancy agreement, it's quite loose in that it's very flexible for you. And if it doesn't work out for you, just give them 3 months notice. But it also means that you can go off and I can do consultancy work for another law firm if they need someone to work for them for doing some cover or whatever. And it really works out well.
Yeah. So I guess in order to get to the stage where you've got enough income to employ some staff and then start upscaling and expanding the business, I think from an outsider's point of view, it would make sense to look at those other avenues. I know a lot of the time it's scary getting your own insurance in and making those leaps, but you've already made that leap to go to where you are now. And often you'll find that you'll get that money back investment-wise several times over within a short period of time if you put your heart and soul into it. It will also allow the kind of peaks and troughs of the property market not to be quite so prevalent. I think in the coming years there'll be a lot of mergers and acquisitions, a lot of business failures, a lot of startups and so on like that. So those are kind of areas that you could get into, I suppose, in order to kind of bolster the kind of cash flow, if you like.
The property, absolutely. Well, so Setford as a firm they offer a whole broad range of services, but I see what you're saying, because I find it difficult to refer to somebody that I don't know. Whereas if I did have a team of people that I could trust, that I knew were the best lawyers around town, that I could bring all together, then absolutely, then you're not just relying on the property market and yourself, I suppose. But
it's inherently difficult and scary to make the first steps into employing people, into investing money back into your business, all that kind of stuff. But they are really the two ways of growing it. And by having lots of departments that feed your cash flow, you're not overly reliant upon any one of them. Like, we do a lot of vertical integration here, so we're primarily a block management company, as you all know us from, but we do lettings, we do a little bit of sales, we do development, and then we buy stuff, and then we give it back to the lettings department to let out, and then obviously that reduces our costs from there. We also have a business outsourcing company that I run with somebody else, and that allows us to do some outsourcing from admin point of view, bookkeeping, all that kind of stuff. I've got a chartered accountant that we run a business together as well. So all of those things, they kind of feed into the group, if you like, in one way or another, or their skill sets that I can pull on. Like, the chartered accountant business is quite a startup, so it doesn't really make any money. In fact, it loses a bit at the moment. But having those staff there that we can pull on, and they're in-house, as opposed to perhaps our previous system where we were using an external accountant and you were kind of at their beck and call. Those sort of things, having that vertical integration was like really important to like level out. We could only have a loss-making business if we had profit-making businesses that could support it. Yeah,
absolutely. And I remembered that from in the firm. You'd think, sometimes you could feel that your department is helping keep the others, but then there will also be a time when it's the other way around. So it's just trying to find a balance.
Yeah.
For me at the moment, that's a little bit far away, but it is definitely a goal. And for me, I felt just to actually make this initial step, wherefore I've always thought about it, and I've been people have told me you should do that, but it's always been, I've always thought, I think since COVID, job security, you've been there for a long time. You do a good job. You do good enough. You do, and then all of a sudden you're telling yourself what you shouldn't do. And then I'm 2 years down the line, and I'm still sat at the same desk. And you thought, maybe
I think a lot of people
to go for it.
A lot of people put on the job security thing to it's a very scary time when you go, right, I'm going to hand in my notice. I mean, I remember I was a partner in another business before I left and did all of this, and I handed my notice in, and about 2 days later, my wife said to me, I'm pregnant with our third child. So I thought, well, it has to work now. I don't really have a choice, do I? So I'm not going to go back and ask for my notice back.
No,
I'm
exactly.
too proud for that.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's sort of what's happened with me as well. So, it's...
But I think a lot of people feel like the job is secure, but actually the bones of it is really the job isn't any more secure than you running your own business in reality, because you can be made redundant, they can make cutbacks, you could be put into another department. Businesses are there. I mean, you would say so many people you would have dealt with at the banks doing conveyancing, and they work there for years and years, and then all of a sudden they have a reshuffle and they're gone, and they think their jobs are really secure. They might get a payout or something, but their jobs are no more secure than anybody else's. But when you're self-employed, you are, if it fails, it's on you, but if it succeeds, it's on you. And often business owners probably earn slightly less than they would in the equivalent, pay-way job, but over a long period, when they figure it out and they go, actually, what I'm going to do is do some bolt-ons to this. I'm going to have a little bit of income coming in from a lot of people regularly rather than big amounts being drip-fed. I'm going to put some skin in the game and risk it, taking on some staff. When you get that kind of mindset, you're like, actually, I can do this. And that will allow you to probably take it to the next level to get your kind of... multi-discipline law firm, or expand even just on the conveyancing into other bits of it as well. So.
That's brilliant.
So I just wanted to interrupt quickly here. I hope you're really enjoying the podcast guest today, but did you know that you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, various other sites like that, And you can also listen to us on all major streaming services as well. You may already be listening through one of those things, but look at the other avenues that you can do us. You can see us in physical form if you're listening in audio, or if you want to just listen as you're driving along in the car, you can go to things like Spotify or Apple Podcast and listen to us there. So please don't forget to check those out. Please always like and subscribe to all the channels, share them about and the rest of it, and that will help grow the audience. And then eventually we'll have a massive amount of people that are always really going to get involved, and it's a nice big entrepreneurial hub. So if you want to contribute to that, head on over to those other channels, press the like button, and don't forget to subscribe. Right, we'll get back to our guest now. I think that employment is a bit overrated in terms of its security. Obviously, I employ quite a lot of people. And there are lots of people, so it isn't for everybody because the risk factors and laying awake at night wondering whether you're going to make wage bills and all that kind of stuff, and the stresses and so on. And so I get the stress factor is taken away, but for the most part, the job itself as a physical entity is not really any more secure than whether you fail or succeed, because ultimately if I fail, everyone's failed, haven't they? And you could argue I'll be the last out of the business. So realistically, my job's the most secure, if you like, in that sense. So people don't really look at it like that, because obviously they just don't want the stress and the hassle of it. And some people just like the paycheck and the rest of it, and the kind of knowledge that that's not really their responsibility to deal with. But yeah, big steps. But I think that you've gone out on your own, and you're doing that. But to take some people on, I think it's going to accelerate your business in a different directions, really, because you can't do everything. You've got to grow the business. And I think one of the very first podcasts that we did was about a guy who they'd just done a management buyout, and they were going to look at doing something with their business and making some changes and the rest of it, but nobody was actually concentrating on getting the customers that they wanted. So they were going to make all these changes to attract these customers, and I was like, but do they actually exist? Is anyone who's going to talk to them or whatever? And he was like, well, that was my old job, but since the buyout I no longer do that. So I was like, well, you need to do someone's got to do the business development. You've got to kind of almost get to a point. I know previous firms that you're at, like the owners eventually become a point where they're not really practicing law anymore, and their whole job is about growing and managing the practice essentially.
It's one of those things that I've learned, and actually at the last firm I worked for, it was all about that. And you could be the best lawyer in the world, but if you can't pick up a phone, or if you can't speak to people, or if you can't go into a room and tell people what you do, then you're not actually going to be that valuable. You might be fantastic at the law, but you're not going to generate work yourself. So I always knew that.
It's personal branding, really. Whether you slap it all over Facebook and Instagram and all the rest of it, you're just working on your immediate network. I think it's really important. And someone said to me, it's a bit like exercise. Like, no one really wants to do it, but you've got to do it to keep fit. And it's a bit like that in business. Most people don't really want to sit in front of cameras and don't really want to go to networking events and mingle with people they don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
It's generally most people's idea of hell, but it's a bit like the exercise thing. You kind of got to do it in order to grow your kind of value to people. And I think I see so many people that go to a networking event and then they come back and say, I didn't really get anything from that. But it's about farming those relationships over long periods of time.
Of course it is. And that's what I found when the very first, I suppose, the networking event I went to, and you felt like you had to go there and show that you could bring in work. Someone was going to buy a property and you're going to sign them up there and then, and then you slowly realise that actually you just being there is the thing, because then people know what you do, who you represent, and then you can start building relationships from there. And then organically work will come, and hopefully you can help other people out as well. So it works out well.
Yeah, I think it's important, especially if you're going to be the head of your business. And that's where I would be seeing it. So I think the first few steps would be like, try and maybe get a little bit more income from expanding your kind of offering, take on some people, and then once you've got that into a kind of stable position, then you can then look at then maybe removing yourself from like the kind of day-to-day stuff of it, so you can spend more time growing it. An important thing on that journey, I mean, I don't know, you probably got some experience from your previous firm on this, because they grew quite a lot, is that remaining that culture. And I think at this stage for you, it's really key to work out what kind of core values and culture you have, so that any staff that you take on, whether they're apprentices or people that have got some training, you're kind of molding them into the way you want to be, because it's far better as you grow to try and promote those people, and they, like a rising tide, they come with you, than it is insert people. We've sort of suffered that with this business, where we've grown and then we haven't had the right kind of caliber of existing staff, so we've had to then insert management, and perhaps they didn't really have the same core values as us and the ethos that we kind of breathe here, if you like. So that's caused issues, and that's something to be kind of really mindful of as you're trying to grow and take people on, that they fit with your kind of, technically on paper they might be able to do like the job of I was going to say soliciting them, but that's not the right word, is it? the right job of a solicitor. But, do they actually fit with your business? Are they the kind of like person that you want dealing with your clients?
Yeah, you want to find that diamond really, that you can...
I think you want to find them, but my advice would be to make sure you're clear about the core values. Like what's going to distinguish you from another firm? And how do you want those people to be? Are they going to, be non-shirt wearing type people, or do you want someone that's going to wear a tie, or, and are they kind of the solicitors that will pick up the phone to people? They're going to break the mold, because, there's no offense to anybody who's a solicitor, but they do have a stigma attached to being this kind of like slightly above normal society, smartly dressed. You go to their office, it's like an occasion in the sense, because they tend to be in quite grand buildings. You're going to sort of break that mold. The staff that you take on are going to need to fit into that mold as well. So if you pinch someone from another law firm and they're not cut from that kind of style, that cloth, then they might be technically capable of the job, but they're not going to fit with the culture. If you think about the law firm that you left, that's a very different culture to your traditional kind of Midler Lewis kind of high street type solicitors that have been established for like the last 100 years or something. They kind of have that accolade of like gold plated handles on the front door and all that sort of stuff, and the big desk that you
exactly. I think that's what the guys trying to do, is just to make people comfortable, and that's I've taken all of that on board.
But I think it's about finding your, like, if that's the style you go for, just making sure that the people you take on do fit into that. And I think you'll find having those extra sources of revenue will see you through the peaks and troughs of conveyancing, because it's ultimately affected on the property world. If people aren't buying stuff, then you haven't got transactions.
Exactly.
So it's a volatile market, but I think the other sides of the law are a little bit more stable, maybe less profitable and less volume, but a bit more stable in terms of regular income. And then that can feed into your business vertical integration style, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, you never know with AI and stuff, whether the banks is going to be made redundant anytime soon.
Well, I mean, there is that, but you could be the first person to embrace AI and say, look, we can do the work of 50 solicitors, but there's only 6 of us here, because we use AI efficiently, if that's what you want to turn your attention to.
Well, exactly.
Because ultimately with AI, it's only ever going to be as useful as the information you interpret out of it. Like if I ask AI about a parking ticket, like how do I get off of one or whatever, and then it's going to pull that information from the internet, but I don't know if that's correct or not.
That's true,
It could be anything, isn't it? So someone's still going to have to interpret that.
Exactly.
So I think there's probably is a gap in the future, possibly, but it's those sort of things that are going to distinguish you. I think if you go out on your own, like completely, using those things and being modern and breaking down those barriers, and economies of scale as well, because an older style firm will not be able to react to AI or whatever. They have too many restrictions and things in place. Plus, like, as people get older, they inherently find it more difficult to embrace new systems, technologies, or whatever.
I think we found that in COVID, actually. I think we found that in COVID. Some of the law firms were fine and adapted. Others found it very difficult, and to all of a sudden to have to go everyone to work from home. A lot of places weren't ready for it, but that's one thing. Having the right systems in place.
Yeah, and, systems and processes are key. And as I say, if you can adopt like new technologies and the rest of it, that's going to go well with you. And you're young and small, and you can be agile and adapt quickly. If you take your old previous firm, for instance, they're probably something as simple as a telephone contract. They probably signed in for 5 years on a telephone contract, but then tomorrow a brand new kind of way of working, like say you can work through Microsoft Teams now for your telephone calls and the VoIP and the rest of it. You adapt that, and then you're already ahead of that firm because they can't get out of their contract for 5 years, so they're not going to then go to do that. So startups do have the power to kind of disrupt the market a little bit. Obviously, it's risky at that stage because you haven't got the stability, if you like, of the regular income, but you do have the power to kind of do things differently.
That's right,
yeah. Well, I hope that's been really useful for you. I don't know if you had any other kind of questions or anything, or anything you wanted to say or anything at all.
No, not really. I just think it's, for me, because I was just at such an early stage, it's just amazing to be able to take on board so much knowledge from other people who've done it, you know. And I've seen these companies just like yours, they grow from smaller beginnings to then all of a sudden everyone knows you. And that's what I've always wanted to do. I suppose my key advice for myself was to make sure you're present. And that's just all, you know, at networking events, just being there is enough. You may not pick up the work straight away, but just being there and then building the relationships with people has allowed me to be present. And then being present in places that when you're talking to people, it's actually not like you're talking to them, but you're not really listening. You're constantly got something going on. Your phone's going off. That's sort of where I'm at, just to make sure that I'm completely focused and present in what I'm doing, because that's what your clients want as well. Yeah. You want them; they want you to be focused on you as well as
Okay. I have a question for you. Well, actually, it's I suppose it's kind of 3 questions.
Yeah.
So for anybody that's out there at the moment that kind of is thinking of perhaps making a move to go out on their own, or maybe do a franchise thing, or whatever they might be doing, it's all well and good hearing it from me. I mean, obviously, I'm not that old, but I'm obviously fairly long time ago when I made that move, and I couldn't see myself going backwards from that. But could you give us kind of like your opinion of what currently are like the 3 sort of big things that people miss out, or things, learning curves or whatever you've had?
Yeah, so
I just thought I'd come away from the podcast just for a minute, just to highlight one of the other businesses that I'm involved with. Yes, it's a shameless plug, but I'm going to do it anyway. So the We Group, what we do there is we help businesses with their outsourcing services. So from bookkeeping to general administration, looking at their websites, job descriptions, anything at all like that, then we can deal with that at the We Group. So if you just go into Google and just type We Group Sussex in there, you'll be able to find us. There'll be links in the description, or you can have a look at any of the websites or any of the social media stuff that I share personally on the channel and the rest of it. Big fan of outsourcing because it allows you to basically get on with what you should be doing, which is growing your business. Back to the podcast.
So the way I've done it was by going off with Setford's. It's allowed me to be essentially be insured and stuff. So I think I'm lucky in that the way I've done it in a risk-free way. Maybe not risk-free, but a lot less risk than other people would do.
Risk.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I saw what had happened when I started. Well, when I started at my old firm, in that for residential property, we earn on panels for lender panels. So it took a big push from the team to bring in the clients to support them, even though we weren't able to act for their lenders. So I think just making sure that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. It's very difficult with law. It's because it's sort of so regulated. I didn't feel like I was in a position to leave where I was to then start up a brand new firm. But I feel like what I've done by taking this step is for me now to work out whether I can then take the next step on. And I think just being prepared and making realistic targets. So I like to think I've made realistic targets. My targets that of files and matters open are a lot lower than my target was when I was at the old firm, because I knew that, I'm just having to look after myself. So just making little targets that you can hit each month is I think key for anyone who wants to start up.
I think that's quite useful information, really, because you're probably on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being super risky and 1 being like I'd never leave my job. You probably sit, by me saying, probably in 5 or something on that scale. And I think that's not a knock on you. I think that a lot of people really sit at a 4 or a 5, like they want to do it, but they don't really want to do it. They're kind of in that, they're probably more like a 3 in reality, even though they think they're a 5. But I think those key points really are, looking at things like insurance, obviously, making sure you're covered, because a lot of people forget about that. De-risking, which is part of your insurance thing. So de-risk as much as you possibly can, like maybe try and do a side hustle in the background and build up some clients, or join a franchise or something like that. Learn the mistakes from the current firm you're in, what's working and what's not working, and try and take those away. So they're all useful tips.
Amazing. I already know from the first 6 months that I've made their mistakes, but I've already learned from things of how I wanted to do it, and I had this idea of how I was going to set up my day and stuff, and that's now changed a little bit because I've had a child, but I've still got that there, so I don't want to slip back into ways that I worked before, when I'm using the good things about what I did, and I'm very open to criticize myself, and I always found if anyone did have a lot of people, they get worried if they have a complaint about them, but I think it's great because it just allows you to learn from that. So I think absolutely. So I think just not be scared and go for it. I couldn't go actually with what I was doing because I had to be a certain level of qualification or for a certain period. So actually I couldn't probably go off and have done it any earlier, as it transpires. But I think I'm so glad I have done it, because just being able to do something for yourself and being your own boss is great.
Okay. So I think we'll kind of wrap things up there, but just to kind of summarize, I suppose, in kind of my medicine or advice would be to not get so scared of like expanding, like try and take somebody on at some point, try and get those peaks and troughs a bit more leveled out, your offering to be wider, more variety to it. And really, I suppose if we refer back to that kind of risk scale that I referred to, if you could get to like a 7, I think you might find that that's a nice comfort zone. And I think if you believe in yourself, a 7 is really achievable. And then you can start to go, right, I'll take somebody on and I'll do this and the rest of it. And I know it's going to take, a bit of courage and a bit of guts, and you're probably going to end up earning slightly less for a short period of time, but you'll find that they are like investments. Like you've worked with hundreds of buy-to-let property investors, I'm sure, and they will buy a buy-to-let property, it will give them a return. So you can invest into staff and they'll give you a return back. So as long as that's measurable and you keep a track on that, then it's a similar type of investment.
Exactly. I do that with marketing, with networking, with going about, you may take someone out for dinner and you pay for it £200 and you think, God, that was a lot. but that's gonna hopefully open up avenues for
cements relationships and builds them over long periods of time.
So you invest in it, but it's always good. Otherwise, you're just going to be
but invest in the right people though as you expand, and make sure that they fit with your culture, and don't be scared of employing people. It's kind of just a natural progression of it, and will allow you to get to a point where you can work on your business and not in it.
Yeah, that's the overall goal for anyone, really.
It is. Generally speaking, some people are quite happy working in their business, but they've just created themselves a job, basically.
Yeah.
So they're no more secure than they were when they left their first job. So, we'll sort of wrap it up there. But how do people get hold of you if they want to have conveyancing services or reach out to you?
So if you typed in Chris Hoadley into Google, Chris Hoadley conveyancing, you'll find that I'll pop up as a consultant licensed conveyancer with Setford's. And then I've also got my telephone number, and I'm just about to start up. I think the next thing is actually to have a bit of a social media following where it's not just coming from me personally, but that's really the next step for me, is actually to get to show people how they can get hold of me without just relying on people knowing, word of mouth, and so that people can come to me who've never used me before and never been recommended. So at the moment, it's purely a lot of it is coming through word of mouth. But to get a hold of me, I'll leave my details.
So you can go Chris Hoadley on Google, and then in the future be able to find you on Facebook, Instagram, whatever under that kind of guise.
I'm on LinkedIn. I try and post stuff on LinkedIn, but that's it.
And what's the telephone number if people just want to pick up the phone old-fashioned style?
So my telephone number is 01323 402 542, and that's my Eastbourne number. And then if you went onto the website of Setford's, there's also the main number there, and that goes onto a switchboard. Someone will pick up the phone and put it through to me. But
perfect. And we'll put all your details in the description below, including your email. That's all right for people to email.
Absolutely. Email, telephone number is a Facebook, WhatsApp.
Whatever.
I'm available for your conveyancing needs anyway.
Good stuff. Well, brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on. Be nice to have you on in about a year's time or so to see if you've kind of expanded a little bit upon your offering.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the chance.
No problem at all. Take care. So as you can see there with Chris, he is a very capable person on paper and the rest of it, but like a lot of accountants, solicitors that I come across, they are particularly risk adverse. That's come across with Chris today, and we've chatted on that. You've seen my scale of entrepreneurial riskness from scales 1 to 10. I've given Chris maybe a 5 or a 6 on that scale. And I think if Chris can really just get himself up to that next bracket in there, he'll have the courage to employ those people and make sure that his law firm is actually expanding upon its offerings, and therefore he'll have different drip feeds of income from different departments, and he will stabilise his business. And I really like the key tips from Chris there at the end. Touches a lot on making sure that you learn your lessons from previous jobs that he's done, and that he actually thinks about what he's doing and mitigates his risk. And that's very much like a kind of solicitor, accountancy type person. There's nothing wrong with those type of folk. It's just they tend to be less risk averse than your kind of traditional entrepreneur, if you like. But what I think is really, really important for that is that there are a lot of books and things like that that can also help you with these kind of journeys. There's obviously Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a big book about property and assets and the rest of it. Delivering Happiness is a really good book, and that is about a lot about core values and getting the right team, which we talked upon with Chris. So you can really look into those things. And there are loads of other books about highly effective people, the 7 habits of that. There's lots and lots of bibliographies that you can learn from entrepreneurial people. So we'll put a link in the description for some various books and things like that will be interesting for you to read. And we're also going to get a shelf put up behind me here very shortly, which is going to have some inspirational books that are kind of going to touch on various things like Good to Great, and as I say, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Delivering Happiness, all those kind of books, Who Not How, all that sort of stuff. I love a good book. I must admit, hands up, I don't tend to read them. I love listening to them. It's a really, really good way filling your time when you're driving along, rather than just listening to another Sugar Babe song on the radio, repeat, listen to a book and actually learn and educate yourself. So that's my key tip for today. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to check out all our other videos. We don't just do podcasts. There are loads of other business tips and things on there. So go and have a look at those. And if you want to come on a business podcast, head on over to our website, matthewcollinsmith2ts.biz. Fill in the form. It's about halfway down the page. Click on that. You can watch other videos from there as well. But click on the form, stick in the details there, get yourself on the podcast, and then hopefully we'll be able to help you on your kind of business journey.